Hey yo, hey yo, yo, hey. Hey yo, hey yo, yo, hey. Hey yo, yo, hey yo, hey yo. Hey yo, yo, hey yo, hey yo, yo, hey. Hey yo, hey.
Ayakwi, Neck Now, Mary Kate Droz, Sheree, Nausunawak, Great Lakes Anishinaabe, Essie Wyandotte, Mate Wumachos. My name is Mary Kate Droz. I have grown up in Trinidad, California. I'm a Wyandotte and Ojibwe descendant, and we're here today at the Tribal Justice Summit here at HSU CalPoly, and it's the first of its kind, hosted by the Northern California Tribal Court Coalition, sponsored by the Yurok tribe. Native people and non-Native people from all over Northern California came together to talk about tribal justice as it's expressed in tribal courts. But the big idea today was wellness. They say that we heal together, and that includes clients, that includes service providers, that includes general public.
I was asked today to be the keynote speaker. And back in 2007, when I was a volunteer at California Indian Legal Services, I volunteered at the first Tribal Courts Conference. And back then, I didn't even know what a keynote speaker was. And at that conference, our keynote speaker just happened to be Judge Abby Abinant. And that was the first keynote address I had ever heard. I was very inspired by her. I was very inspired by Judge Blake, who was also there, and many other judges. And I knew in that very moment that I wanted to be a tribal court judge. And I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Judge Abby and Judge Blake and others, Judge Williams. And so it's an honor to be here, especially with my mentors here. So if you can give them an oh. Thank you.
The main message that I'm trying to convey to students about court systems is that we in the tribes need to not create mirrors of the state or federal system. What we need to do is create courts that reflect our value systems. The state courts and federal courts are based on power and rights. That is not what our courts should be based on. It is not what our culture teaches us. We know and we understand that we have responsibilities that are interlinking to each other and to place. And that's going to make that value system, it's going to drive different practices. And what I need for people to do, and what we need help with, is developing those practices. How do you do that? How do you meet your responsibilities in the world to your place, the place you've been given, and to all the beings in that place?
Ayakwi Naknau Bessie Shorty. I'm the Yurok Tribal Court Mediator, located in Humboldt and Del Norte County areas. And today we're at the Northern California Tribal Justice and Court Summit 2024. The summit's important because it connects people to peers and mentorship, but also it brings in county agency employees so they can have a peek into what tribes are doing on the justice and court level.
Our mission today was to encourage a learning educational opportunity about tribal courts, but what really happened was people that put in the work day in and day out for the wellness of our community, that see the miracles, that see the struggles, that see the tears, were in community and were able to support each other and came out with spirit renewed, inspired, and remembering why we're here today. And we were really blessed to have the spirit in the room with us. The Creator is healing and our culture is healing, and that's what we heard over and over today.
When we set up the court at Yurok, we wanted to make the court look like and act like a member of your extended family. the idea is that each advocate and how we try to train them is your goal and role is to be an aunt or an uncle. And you know how intrusive we are as aunts, so you can just figure that one out. And the whole notion of that is that you then can ask for help, you get help, you can help set the agenda, and when you don't show up, yeah, you might get a demerit, but you're going to get a knock on your door too.
Bahim, Nicole Anna, Round Valley K Anna. My name is Nicole Whipple. I'm a member of the Round Valley Indian Tribes, and I'm here as the moderator for the Tribal Court Summit at CalPoly Humboldt. The reason why this is so important for our communities is that, it's really something for our tribes to take full advantage of, that we have this ability to have our own tribal court systems and ways to govern and mediate and care for our tribal people in a way outside of the, state and government ways that just do not fit for our tribes. I've had experience working with, re-entry through our county, which ideally that was a great idea, but the capacity was not there to support our tribal people. And so it's really up to us tribal people to step up for ourselves rather than be dependent on others to do it for us, but be supportive together. And so coming together, collaborating, and teaching, other agencies that don't understand what works for us, and having that ability to do so is important, and sharing amongst the collaborators and combining our tribal courts together to share ideas.
So here's what I believe that tribal sovereignty really means. Indian tribes were sovereign nations centuries before the Europeans arrived on this continent, and they continue to exercise powers of a sovereign government. These powers originate from our retained inherent sovereignty. They were not given to us. Tribes and Indian people were not given special rights by the United States. They possess the rights that we still retain from time immemorial.
What we're trying to accomplish is very multifaceted accomplishments here. Is what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate future leaders. And it's our responsibility in all things to think not just of ourselves or the next generation, but for several generations, 7, 8, 9, 10. More than ever, we have to do that. I've worked in tribal court now for 10 years, and when I tell people in the outside world that I work in tribal court, they say, tribes have courts? So we're starting at ground zero, where people don't even realize the importance of our sovereignty, the importance of our tribal codes, rules, ethics, and how we do things. And they're thinking Perry Mason. And the truth is we are the polar opposite of Perry Mason and what they see on TV.
It's so important for the tribes to have their own justice systems, because they're able to work with the families that are part of their tribal membership, but also to separate them from the colonizer's viewpoint of like Western law. And we can bring in our language and our own tribal ideology and our own stories, and then they can break free from the systems that have oppressed them for so long.
Native community and non-Native community to understand that there's a need for wellness in our community, and there's some things that we can get out of like the state and county court system, the federal system, but there's something that's a lot different, that's more impactful, that our Native people are getting from the tribal justice system, which is very unique because we're tying in a lot of our ancestral, cultural methods into the court system. And instead of punishing people, we're doing things in a creative way to connect people back to their culture, back to the community. That's very powerful and impactful.
One of the things that I work on is with the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I'm a family-to-family support group facilitator, and I try to advocate for Indigenous people in our communities who experience living with mental illnesses, but it's from when they start into the schools for individual education plans, and then in our counties of Humboldt and Delaware County, they lack connection to services. And now, like 20 years later, I see the same children being incarcerated for different behaviors, but it seems to have started in elementary school and even Head Start, and the lack of services that they get to try to learn how to live with their mental illness. And now we have a huge generational population of Native men being incarcerated in our jails. So that's the message that I want to get out, is to stop the pipeline from school to jail for our Indigenous people.
So when people come before our tribal court, Judge Abby in particular and Judge Bowers, it's not that they're bad people. They might find themselves in a bad situation. They might come from a bad situation. What it's indicating to us is that they're out of balance. Everybody gets out of balance sometimes at some point in their lives, from a little out of balance to way out of balance. And all they need is that help, that assistance, the guidance, and someone to care about them enough to help them, enable them to make those first steps to regain the balance in their life, not to punish them. And with our prisons overflowing, and my experience in state court all those years, I started in a juvenile docket, and then they were in orange file folders. They'd turn 18, and then I had red adult criminal file folders. And they'd come before the judge, and they would go away to prison for a short time, and then before I know it, here they come back again. We called them frequent flyers because I could remember their prior court case numbers and their history, and it became cyclical for them. And if they didn't die in prison, it was just a matter of time before they went back there and they get institutionalized. And there has to come a time when we realize in this country that there is a place for prisons. I'm not saying there isn't. There are some people that need to be put in these places to protect society and to protect others. They're a danger to themselves and they're a clear danger to others. I get that. I'm not naive, but it's not appropriate for every single case. I think there are better ways, and these pioneers in restorative justice, like these judges that we have at this summit this week, today, is just so important to get that message out that there is another way, through diversion, through the tribal judges sitting on the bench with state judges. I mean, that's innovation at its best. That's emerging, and hopefully we can pull the best of both systems out, and educate the judges, the state judges along the way, to our ways as Native people, how it's best to deal with Native people that come before state judges. Again, it boils down to education and cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity.
So we have 3 communities that have access to medical care, SUD, and mental health when they're fully staffed. Not all of the tribes and the communities have that at their, available to them. So we are fortunate in that aspect.
We need the diversity training in education because you can't read it in a book and you're not taught it in schools. So these students at HSU are really getting a master class in what it means to have tribal court, tribal justice, and the introduction of diversion and restorative justice, and our work that we do to restore balance.
We also have an informal agreement with the youth probation department at the county, so that youth who are tribal, not necessarily Trinidad or Rancheria members, but tribal, and are sentenced to community service hours or something like that, they can come and work with our with the court staff, the court project planner in particular, and the SUD counselor on cultural activities, and so that they get re-engaged in the cultural activities like building a sweat house and beading and that sort of thing, that they can engage in that and serve the community, or cleaning regalia, that's another one, that the youth can have that supervised community service time, so that they're serving their state state mandated requirement, but are getting re-engaged with the cultural aspects of the tribe. And it has been very successful so far. And one of the the first participant in that, and his girlfriend are both, even though they've done their community service, they are still actively engaged with the tribe and actively engaged with the cultural activities of the community. And it's really a wonderful opportunity to see that.
Thank goodness the team, like Jasmine Morse, she became a great friend of mine and walked through a lot of different things with me. And, you know, just, it's amazing how they care. You know, when you're in addiction, you don't care about yourself, you don't love yourself, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. So when you have people that care about you more than you care about yourself at the time, it makes you start to say, maybe I am worth caring about. You know, maybe there's something to this. But then having guidance, like the books and the people, just all of it together has been a blessing.
The concept of restorative justice as opposed to punitive justice. I worked in state court for many, many years, and it was very punitive, and more states, judges, finding out that just doesn't work. You can't punish people back into balance. We are at balance people in that Yurok are, I was taught that Yurok people are put here on earth to restore balance to the earth and all who dwell on her. So as world renewal people, we have a ceremony. We have every year 10 days where we fast and we pray and we sing and we dance for the world. And what we're asking Creator to do and asking all the ancestors to do is to help us restore balance in all things. So we don't just pray for our own people, we pray for all people everywhere. We pray for everything from the water to the air to the grass to the sky. Everything is fasted and prayed for every year.
My name is Katrina Taylor, and we are at CalPoly Humboldt over at the Native American Forum talking about tribal justice, more importantly wellness, and how we can encompass culture into that. I'm a firm believer that I stand before you today with 17 years of sobriety because of culture and incorporating that, right? And also the other thing is that I heard some stuff that my dad was trying to incorporate years ago, right? Dad worked in tribal courts, well, in regular courts, and I would often ask stories about him. And one of the best stories that I heard was that he was in regular court for an unrelated case to a young man who was getting ready to get sentenced to youth authority, and my dad stepped in and asked if he could approach the bench and asked the bench if he could handle it in a cultural way. And the judge said, what do you propose? And he said, I'd like to take him, instead of you sending him to jail, I'd like to take him and cut wood for elders, and so that he can give back to the community. And from my understanding, that same youth is doing well and a productive member of society today. And so to see it fast forward, because that was many, many years ago, to what Wellness Court is doing for individuals today, it just kind of is like full circle, right?
As a water protector and policy advocate for Save California Salmon, one of my work projects is creating a template resolution for our tribal people to accept TEK as best practices and knowledge for not only science in protecting our waterways and lands, but also in wellness activities.
Smoked Chinook that I just
Chinook?
Yeah.
What is it called?
Salmon. So there's some that's more dried on this side, and the other is more kippered. I was raised like super kippered. My grandparents were like, if you don't have this much oil in the jar, you don't know what you're doing.
I think that is really the most important thing for us to do right now, is for us all to jump on and have that our own resolution, our own policy on explaining what wellness is, along with how wellness is connected to traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge or family knowledge and history, and uplifting our tribal practitioners and elders and ceremonial people equally, not only in our own governments, but also with these state and federal agencies.
You know, state agency or court, criminal charges, a CWS case, you know, probation, eviction from housing. You know, the core of wellness court and what it offers is not necessarily contingent on the legal circumstances, so we can really take anybody from any route, and that's something that is hard to people to, you know, understand that.
There's nothing more satisfying than to see a graduation, to see a family reunified, to see, to have a family talk about how years have passed and they felt that this was never going to happen. And to be a part of that, to be a part of that as a team, I think is one of the most satisfying things I've done as a judge. I think that we have a lot of there's a lot of things to continue to hammer out with the state as they continue to learn about how our systems operate. And I'll tell you that, you know, during the formation of the Tribal State Forum, we had a lot of visitors from the Judicial Council that came in and looked at our court system, and they told us, you guys have it right. We don't. You guys have this right. We can take the numbers. We can take our time with hearing these cases, and we can, you know, some of the hearsay rules, we can kind of let those go a little bit, because as a culture, we talk, we listen to each other. So when Abby talks about those aunts and, you know, all those people coming in, when we have these wellness courts, sometimes the best marshals of good conduct is those aunts, those uncles, those sisters, those brothers, grandmas. Those people are the best advocates to have on your team. And so, you know, as this joint jurisdiction court, as it's developed, and like Judge Abby, HUPA has the adult, family, and juvenile healing to wellness court programs. And as we continue to expand them, we are finding that there are more and more people who are willing to take that chance and put themselves out there and expose some of those ghosts, those skeletons in the closet, to work on sobriety and reunification with their families. I truly think that if there was one docket I could say that I would keep and not have to hear anything else, it would be family wellness. I think that that's true tribal court.
Our members are able to get cultural services. I am not Native, obviously, but I don't have to be in order to have the compassion and understanding of what happened to Indigenous people. So I get to play a small part in doing that in my work. I can't change the past, but I most definitely can influence the future. So I'm honored to get to be here.
It is always important to do the right thing. It is always important to live with honor, and to live with honor in the place that you are. And when people talk about sovereignty and they talk about we are sovereign nations, no, we are nations that have responsibilities because we've been given great gifts. And we need to make sure that we take care of this place and each other and all the beings, and teach those people who came here, and frankly, many of whom do not know how to behave.
For me, that was always really important. And someone that's dependable and will show up and be honest. I'm about transparency with my coworkers, and knowing that, you know, like, hey, so-and-so's not having a good day, or somebody's going on at home. I don't need to know the details, but I'll be able to support them better and know that vice versa, it will be returned, because we are a goofy little family.
I would have to say that the peacemaking panel was definitely one that was very something I would really love to see happen in our tribe. I think we are all very familiar with those old ways of healing together, and we have elders in our community that are asking for things to come around the fire, but not being understood as to what that means to be able to make peace and move on. I think it's just in our nature now, not our own nature, but something that has been put upon us to respond to in a negative way and continue responding and carrying on those things because of the historical traumas and lateral violence and things that are going on in our tribes. To just, it's a cry for help when we continue to bring up old things that have passed that we have no longer have control of. And so finding that way to make peace and move on in a good way so that we can bring on new and good medicine in our communities is very important.
You know, I've seen the damage that addiction does to families, and I want to see us returned to a whole and healthy community in relationship with one another. So that's, for me, what PTSD is.
I look at it now and I know without a shadow of a doubt that once we start receiving clients, you're going to have an amazing program. It is rich. It is rich with Trinidad Rancheria culture. It has so much input from the people who live there, from the community members. And so I'm very excited, as you can ask anybody I work with, about us hopefully receiving our first client soon. Yes, so thank you.
I've been playing six since I was a little kid. I started playing with men when I was 17. I'm about 30, about to be 39. Tomorrow, I've been able to talk to the kids about is there's a lot of guys that I grew up around that aren't here anymore because they weren't unable to like manage their aggression. They took things out in violence, and some of these people are gone. And you know, a lot of these kids are like left alone with, you know, other kids to like mentor them. Now that we have these programs in place and we have a lot more like healthy males in the community, that's, you know, making a huge like shift in, you know, what's going on today with, you know, the fatherless absence, and, you know, just having more men and more programs and more activities, you know, for these kids to get involved in at a younger age, whether it's like intervention, like, you know, preventive measures, or like even working with people like after, you know, they get out of juvenile hall or out of the prison system, because this wasn't just for kids. And like a lot of people like my age and older are still learning about these things, and they can still benefit from all these traditional methods.
We have not been taught or encouraged to develop those practices, so that if you try to find them, it's really hard to find them because nobody's really doing it that way. And we had a break during the invasion when a lot of our practices were taken away from us. And in addition, we got a lot of problems we never had before. So now with that combination, we have to transcend that, go back to our values, and develop practices for these new griefs, as it were.
So I definitely feel a great connection to the, you know, dam removal, and not only, you know, being able to jump in at the end of it and learn so much about the importance and have those connections and be able to, like, I got to go and put my hands in the water that hadn't run for 100 years, and seeing Yurok's tribal leaders weeping, and just knowing that, you know, something has been done right. You know, at that point, we knew, all of us tribal people, feeling that water, seeing that water, the weeping was because we knew what was going to happen. We already knew the fish were going to be resilient and return. But as we set and fought, you know, we kept hearing scientists and biologists talk about, like, it might happen, they might come back, and it may be 10, it may be 100 years. And to see those fish return immediately as soon as the water was released really shows, you know, how our genetics and DNA, why as tribal people we follow those waterways, why we respect the fish and honor the fish and all of our plant and life beings, is because we know when we see their resiliency in their DNA, which is why we follow them, they don't follow us, which is different in our way of life. And so it really does set a beautiful guide and sets up for tribes like myself and us on the Eel River as we are looking at dam removal as well. And, you know, I have to appreciate that all of our fights and battles, you know, we have been sitting here, you know, asking to stop looking at these diversions and dams and storages as one piece. Right now, we are thankful on the Eel River that the FERC and PG&E are starting to look at our river as a whole, because that's what it is. When you puncture one piece and you take a stop, you know, it's like a heart, or like, you know, if in a body, it's just like our body. If we were to puncture one piece, it doesn't only affect, you know, if it one limb, it affects the entire system. And that's how our rivers move and flow. And so it's finally coming to a reality where, you know, these agencies are understanding of that versus, you know, just looking at one piece. And that's how our Native people are in life in general, with all of our elements, with the water, the fire, the wind, the stars, and the, you know, the sun and the moon. So it's a beautiful thing to see. I'm happy to be a part and be able to share, you know, our family's knowledge now as somebody that matters.
What I want people to come away with is to know you have a purpose, and your purpose is to meet your responsibility and to develop those practices. And we all have that purpose. And if you don't do your purpose, it's not going to get done. You're important, and what you do is important.
Today, one of the aha moments, one of the glimmers was Judge Abby, as well as Wellness Court alumni Crystal Charles, reminding us about blood memory. And that what that means is no matter where you're from, where you've grown up, your teachings from your ancestors always exist in your DNA, from the stories, the songs, the places, the smells, and the land will remember you when you come home.
Hey yo.